lovely to have you all here, and anybody who's joining virtually as well. So just a quick introduction to me and why I'm here. I'm Claire Jackson. I'm head of product delivery at 67 Bricks, but I'm here with a couple of other hats on as well. So I'm an SDG Publishers Compact Fellow, and I have some fellows down in the front row, so please do go and speak to them afterwards if you'd like to know more about that work. I am also co-chair of the ALPS Special Interest Group on Sustainability and Publishing. It's a really thriving SIG. We launched at this conference really last year, and we have, I think, coming up to about 90 members now. So a really active group, keeping us quite busy. We have work streams that we've focused on 4 areas that our members identified as being most important and useful to their work. So the 4 work streams that we've currently got going are editor engagement, in-house stakeholder engagement strategies, so selling the value of the SDGs to your colleagues really in the business. We've got a stream that Joe leads on supply chain, ops and production issues, and then one on measuring and communicating impact as well. One of the common things that we hear in the SIG, and I think really the reason that we're here today, is encouraging all publishers, regardless of their size and regardless of their role within an organisation, to engage within the SDGs. We know that there are some larger organisations with greater resources and directors of sustainability and things like that doing fantastic work and sharing the resources that they've got. But one of the things we hear a lot are the challenges facing smaller organisations or people in non-sustainability roles and how they can engage with the SDGs as well. I think one of the things we're really keen to do today is get some actions and some positive steps that individuals can take regardless of what they're doing. And for me, I think a great outcome of this session is if one person goes away and feels empowered to do one thing differently in the way that they work or the way that they engage with their organisation, and that is a complete win for me. So I will just move on to this. You all know what these are, but as a quick reminder, we have all 17 SDGs up here. I think one of the things that this hopefully highlights that you all know already is that sustainability isn't just about carbon footprint reduction. That's really, really important, but there are many, many ways that the SDGs interact with the work that we do within publishing, and this can be engaged with across lots and lots of different role types. So to reinforce that, I'm delighted that we have an absolutely fantastic panel here today who can speak to the importance of engaging with the SDGs from many different angles. So the way it will work is I will hand over to each of our 4 panelists. We have 3 here in the room, and we have Nazra joining us virtually as well. I will ask them to introduce themselves at the start, so it's not me introducing people who are sat here, because I always think that's a bit odd. And then each panelist will have about 5 minutes for some opening thoughts. We're really keen to get this out to Q&A as soon as possible so that we can have a great group discussion. I think we're a really good size in here to be able to have a good conversation. So to that end, while our panelists are talking, think about the questions that you've got. Alison has been learning how to use the app, so feel free to post your questions on the app, and Alison will be monitoring that, and we can pick things up that way as well. So if you're in the room, it would be great if you ask them yourself, but if you don't want to do that or you're dialing in virtually, then please stick them onto the app, and we can get onto that. So to keep things moving, I'm going to hand straight over to Nazra, if that's okay. So hopefully she will appear on the screen right now. Thanks, Nazra.
Okay. Thank you very much. There's an echo. I hope the audio is all good. Okay, so I'm Nasra Gadoni, and I'm joining from Nairobi, Kenya. I'm a senior instructor and Faculty of Health Sciences librarian at an institution that goes by the name of Aga Khan University, which is based in Nairobi, Kenya. I'm currently a co-chair of the Research for Life Equity Committee, and I've previously held a number of professional and leadership roles, such as the president for the Association for Health Information and Libraries in Africa, AHILA, among many others. I'm delighted to be part of this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, so Nazra, feel free now to go into your opening remarks, if that's okay.
Oh, all right. Okay. So on this theme of taking action on sustainability, Once again, I would just like to say a big thank you for this opportunity to be part of this conversation on taking action on sustainability. I think we can't say that we can't have enough of discussing issues of sustainability because time is running out, the clock is ticking, as we say, and this, in my view, I feel that like there's a lot that still needs to be done. I would like to first start with the issue of partnership. This is because I feel that if we work in silos, we will not be able to achieve sustainability. So it is very crucial and it's important that all stakeholders work together to achieve sustainability. And I'm delighted. I joined one of the sessions this morning, and this is an area that was discussed in terms of working together. This was well articulated and discussed, and I like the message that came out of today's session on that more can be achieved by working together. So publishers need to engage, and whether big or small, on meaningful partnerships, and I would like to underline the word meaningful, towards taking action on sustainability. For example, fostering relationships with stakeholders who are committed to a common goal. For example, we have institutions or organizations like Research for Life. Like I'm a co-chair of one of the committees of Research for Life. For those who are not familiar with Research for Life, you find that Research for Life has a vision which says that they would like to see us contributing to sustainable development goals by increasing the research participation from the global south. And this would be through significantly increasing the participation of researchers, both as consumers and producers. And I like the word contributors, because I think from the global south, we're always looked at as consumers of research, but we also need to look at the angle of contributors to the research ecosystem. The other aspect I would like to bring in is a challenge that we are observing on the low and middle income countries, and this is with regards to the local journals. I would like to tie the point of partnerships with collaboration and what I would refer to as strategic alliances. And this is in line with the local journals. So why am I saying this? Is there's what is happening within our settings is that we find a lot of local journals somehow just fizzle out. They don't seem to be sustainable, and we don't know what the challenges have been. So it is sad to see that there's lack of consistency within the local journals. And I feel that the publishers that are perhaps which we consider more experienced could form strategic alliances with these local journals so that we don't have the local journals being looked at, and I would use the term the low-hanging fruits. And I would explain why I'm saying that. The challenge of our researchers getting high rejection from a lot of journals. What happens, and we hear it from them, is that they say, when I get rejected, I will just look for a local journal. Well, I think that gives a really bad perception of what the local journal is like, because we would be questioning the issue of the quality. So if we have strategic alliances, it means the more experienced publishers would perhaps share explicit knowledge like manuals, procedures, how-to guides that would strengthen our local journals to help in the processes, and so that we ensure whatever is being published in the local journal is of quality. The other aspect I would like to highlight is the importance of green publishing practices. And this way, the publishers would still within coming together to drive sustainability through perhaps unified guidelines or perhaps shared resources. So when you talk about shared resources, publishers can come together to ensure reduced environmental impact through shared resources. This could be maybe shared printing facilities, green distribution networks. And I remember during the introduction, you talked about the value chain and perhaps even shared digital infrastructure so that we have more green publishing practices. And now there's also the issue of sustainability research. I feel that we need to see more emphasis or publishers prioritizing on sustainability research and make this research more accessible to both contributors and readers from diverse backgrounds through practices and approaches that embrace diversity, inclusivity, and inclusion. And now that I have touched on DAI, I wish to reiterate the need for publishers to implement and promote DAI. For example, there's been a lot of talk regarding composition of editorial board. That is just one example among many others. Unfortunately, there still remains a major challenge with imbalanced representation, especially from the LMIC. To further address this imbalance issue, I would like to highlight a very worrying findings that I came across in a very recent study that was published in the Pediatric Radiology Journal. The title of this article was, I just need to look for it, Disparities in Pediatric Radiology Research Publications from LMICs, A Time for Change. Now, this study found that a total number of manuscripts submitted for potential publication in the 4 years, 2019 to 2022, only 0.03% were from LIC, and only 7.9% were from LMIC. Further, the frequency of acceptance of manuscripts from UMIC was 7 times higher than that from LMIC. No manuscripts were published from LIC. I think that, in my view, those are really worrying findings that have been published recently. Lastly, I would wish to address the issue of open access. A lot has been talked about open access, but I feel it's still not a cliche topic because a lot still needs to be done. We are far from achieving what is the intended goal of open access. Knowledge, or rather access to research as a global public good through better and realistic open access models is very crucial. So I would like to just say that access to research is really a powerful enabler in achieving the SDGs and many of the SDGs. But in this case, I would like to highlight the SDGs on people. And you know, in the LMIC, some of the challenges that we experience is poverty, hunger, health issues, education, gender equality, and research would have a big role to play on these. And so publishers need to look at more transformative agreements, better deals, less complex deals with institutions, libraries, and consortium. So as we able to, when we talk about open access, we are really meaning open access, and it is achieving the goal that it is intended to. So in summary, the points that I'm trying to bring out are meaningful partnerships, collaboration and strategic alliances, green publishing practices. This is to achieve the various SDG pillars, DEI initiatives, and last but not least, to provide better or less complex open access models for LMICs, or what we may refer to as the underrepresented regions. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nasra. That was great, and hopefully we can pick up on some more of those issues during the Q&A in a few moments. So I'm going to hand straight over to Hasib, if that's okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm based in Dhaka, Bangladesh. It is my first ALPSP conference, in person, obviously. I work as an independent consultant in the areas of climate change, biodiversity conservation, as well as research system. I'm also I'm a council member of EASE, European Association of Science Editors, and I'm also an associate editor of London Publishing. So these are my connection with this organization. And of course, some of you may know that I'm a chef of the Scholarly Kitchen with my fellow chef, Charlie. So talking about sustainability, sometimes I wonder that where to start. I think we define sustainability in so many different ways, but we need to not only define it, but we need to understand it as well as act on it. So before acting on it, we need to define it. So sometimes we say that sustainable development, it has got 3 pillars, environment, economy, society. But I think SDG, back in 2015, when it was Sustainable Development Goal framework was developed, yes, it looks quite complicated, obviously, 17 goals, hundreds of indicators, 160 odd targets. But it is a useful way to show the road or the pathway where we want to go. You may think it as like a 17 different paths, but they have got connection between them. So if we can define it, so how we actually understand it. So there has been 2 separate surveys conducted in late 2022. Many of you probably have participated in that. One was conducted by United Nations and IPA, and the other one was conducted by EASE with Higher Education Sustainability Initiative. And if I focus on the second one, that was conducted not only those who signed the SDG Publisher Compact. Actually, next month, SDG Publisher Compact, there's a 10 commandment kind of a thing, that will enter into 5th year. So over the last 4 years, we have been talking about it. But if we not focus on who signed it, of course, they are aware of SDG, that's why they signed it. But EASE and HESI's survey showed that European small, of course, I don't like the word small publisher, how can you define small? But they prioritize SDG 4 as the main one. Unlike the UN survey, they focused on climate change. So there is a difference between that. Other differences are smaller European publishers, they don't actually allocate money for SDG activity. They don't have designated people in it, and they don't actually consider SDG into the workflow. They don't have the baseline. So you can see different understanding of SDG or sustainable development actually prevail in the whole ecosystem. And the last survey, I think, which was published, that was done by Kudos on behalf of SDG Publishers Compact Fellows survey last December, that showed a bit positive attitude. It means that over the years, our understanding enhanced. We tried to, felt like although we are the respondents, we can influence or we can expect something greater contribution or greater direction from our senior management. So if we understand all these things, this diversity, these difference of opinion, then what to do about it? Definitely, that's why the theme is taking action. But there are quite a few instruments available. If you go to the SDG dashboard of IPA, fantastic. Each SDG has its own page, lots of resources. Just a few months back, STM, they published their roadmap. There are 5 stages, what to do, when to do. There are lots of checklists. But I'd like to focus on the one that EASE is now finalizing. And I can see Joe is here, Joe Wexon. We are together on the Environment and Sustainability Committee. And she led to develop a checklist where we can actually, we as an organization, we as a kind of a journal, the organization or publisher publish, we can look into how we prioritize sustainability in our strategy. This is one theme. There are some checklists. So you can call it a kind of a tracker, progress tracker, whether we are contributing enough. The second one is environmental sustainability aspects. So we can look into production and distribution, energy use, conferences, marketing, material we use, office space we use, including the way we manage our food and catering services. The third one is obviously quite important, Nasra also mentioned, diversity, inclusion, and equity, not only in our editorial policies, but also authorship and reviewers, how we actually deal with DIE. And final area I would like to focus on, or the tracker actually focusing on, is communicating SDG-related knowledge. So there are so many different tools available. So we just need to just be motivated to start, to take action. I should stop now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hasib. That's great. We do have a slide of useful resources that I will hope to get up on the screen right at the end of this session, so it might be a good thing to take a photo of as well. Joe, I'll hand straight over to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, and thank you for having me. So I'm Jo Jones. I work for Emerald Publishing. I started with them looking after their operations management list and supply chain management, and came into a new position of publishing development manager. I drive everything under a goal-related area called responsible management. That was developed on the back of the fact that with the SDG research that we publish, a lot of that is interdisciplinary. And in order to find a home for that and make it accessible, we developed this goal area. Now, the very heart of responsible management is working and aligning in a more responsible way, and that includes, obviously, working towards the SDGs. Much of the research that we publish is aligned with SDGs, and therefore, as an organisation, we want to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. And that's where I sort of come into ALPS and agreed to work with the special interest group. And I think what's really important is the fact that there is a lot of disparity between the smaller publishers and the resources that are available, and the size of the challenge that is felt to be ahead in terms of starting that journey. But I think if you look at it as progress over perfection, you have to start somewhere. And there's a great resource in terms of ALPS in helping you to start that journey. In terms of Emerald, we didn't have a massive resource and a big department to dedicate to it, but we did have our own special interest group called the Planet Team. And by being passionate and upskilling ourselves, we were able to support other people in the company to start that journey and really focus on areas that we felt that we could affect and we could make a difference. So I think rather than thinking about the journey as a great big thing that you have to achieve all at once and look at all 17 goals, then pick something that you can actually affect and that you have control over, or you can get help with, and you can start that journey and you can actually have an impact on the business and the world, which, essentially we have a responsibility to do that. So in terms of the Planet Team, how we set that up, we looked at focus on 4 areas to try and keep it simple, if you like. So emissions reporting and reduction, what can we affect, and let's focus on that. And then looking at sustainable operations, what are other people in the industry doing? Can we do what they're doing? Can we just copy them? Is it scalable? Let's get there more quickly if we can. And then advocacy. And I think what's really important with the advocacy piece is internal stakeholders and external stakeholders as well. If you're working with suppliers and customers and they're not aware of the SDGs, and many of them aren't, and they don't know what we're talking about sometimes, educate them, tell them why it's important, and then they can start the journey. If they don't know about it, if they don't know the impact, if they don't know that they can have control, then they can't do anything about it. And get them excited about it, show them the difference that they can make. And finally, we're a publisher. We publish SDG content. So as was mentioned earlier, it's making that available to people so that they can act on it and that it can have the impact that the research has set out to start. That research is that pathway to impact. And if we can get that into the hands of the change makers, then we can help make those changes. And we do this in various ways. We're developing new open access journals, as I know many of the other publishers here are doing. And that's one way to make sure that content can be seen. And we also we've curated specific sustainability content as well, and made that free access on a sustainability page so that people can find their way to it easily, and would encourage other publishers to do the same. So in terms of our journey and why I'm working with ALPS and why the special interest group is empowering, I think, is because there are lots of people that are doing lots of different things, and it's being openly shared, and we can all learn from it. Every day is a school day. We haven't got all the answers, but what's really nice is to be able to sit in a really safe space and say, actually, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'd like to understand it, or we haven't got the resources to do this. Have you got any suggestions? Or we don't have the time to do this. We can't do the research. Have you done it already? Can we use that? Will you share it with us? And I think that's a really powerful thing about this group, and why I've really enjoyed working with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo. That was a marvellous plug for the SIG. Much appreciated. And then last but definitely not least, I'll hand over to Sydney. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sydney Gore. I work at Frontiers as a publishing manager. And prior to that, my work was working in virtual events, organising and facilitating large-scale events, including academic conferences over lockdown. I studied international development at university, so sustainability has always been a big passion of mine. And now I'm working within the scientific sphere and trying to find ways to include sustainability in there as well. So at Frontiers, I lead our sustainability network, which is very similar to the group that Jo was describing. There's a grassroots network of employees who were all interested in sustainability, working together to further sustainable practices at the organisation. Initially, we aimed to look at to kind of tackle three main areas, which were very similar to Jo's as well. So operations, editorial output, and employee engagement. As a grassroots network, initially we didn't have very much influence on the operations of the organisation, but we did come up with ideas on how things could be improved. And then, yeah, on the engagement piece, I took my experience working in virtual events to support a series that we run called a speaker series, where we have people from our editorial boards or external people coming in to talk about sustainable topics specifically for the employees, so for my colleagues. And another fun thing that we did was to kind of pair each event with a challenge, so people would get involved with the challenges too, and they're related to what the person was talking about. So for example, we had one of our office's food suppliers come in and talk to us about their kind of supply chain, and then we created a menu of different challenges that people could get involved with, which ranged from reducing their single-use plastic use to creating artwork out of their food waste for the week. So people got really engaged, really involved. The events have just been getting more and more successful, really. And we never thought that we would have an external speaker, but now we've had multiple of them, including an economist who came in from the World Bank to talk to us about donut economics, which was just like mind-blowing that this tiny thing became such a big project. So we've had hundreds of colleagues attending those events and getting involved, and yeah, I'm really proud of that and proud of the momentum that that's created. And I think it just shows that people really do care and they want to do something, but often they don't really have like a platform to do that. So yeah, I'm glad that we managed to create that platform. So we've got that on the one side, and on the other side we also have managed to now get an executive sponsor within the organisation, and we now have a formal sustainability function as well. So we as a network can support the work of that sustainability manager and honour our commitment to sustainability. And it's also building on the work that we had kind of originally come up with. So in terms of organisations, you know, that they, as big organisations, they can have an impact, like Joe was saying, to reach out to the change makers, you know, and influence policy, this kind of thing, to kind of give that wider societal impact. But I think it's also very important as individuals. We do have our role to play, and our actions do all add up. And I think, yeah, effective change really can be mobilised by people who are passionate and motivated. And that's how I became involved with the SIG through this bit of work. So I lead the work stream on internal stakeholder engagement, and I'm also very excited about the work that we've been doing together. It's great to come together, collaborate, share ideas with people from across the industry, from different organisations, mix of different sizes, and there's lots of different experience and ideas in the room. So together we are developing a set of objectives that can be used by all publishing organisations and applied to all job functions within these organisations, including those who are SDG Compact signatories. And the idea is that these would be incorporated into performance frameworks to ensure that each individual at an organisation is accountable for sustainability objectives. So the idea is that we really want to embed sustainability into an organisation and not relying on one single person to do sustainability. And it could be applied as well to organisations of all sizes. So we're hoping to release this very soon, and yeah, I'm very excited about it, and everything that we've been able to achieve already, considering that the SIGs have only existed for a year. Thank you.
That's great, thank you, Sydney. So we've heard from all four of our panellists now, so it would be great to get this out to questions. If you have a question in the audience and you want to ask that, I think we have a roving mic somewhere. If you take it, please say your name and where you're from, still a black style, if that's okay. Alison, is there anything that's come through on the chat that we should...
There's one question on the chat.
Should we take that first, yeah?
Do that first, yes. So, some fantastic information here, lots of strands of possible actions. If the panel could get each of us to take one single priority, focus here, when we get back to our desks, what would that be? One action. What would you recommend?
Fantastic. Who would like to go first? Nazra, do you feel able to jump in on that one first? Did you hear the question? Because I'm conscious Alison didn't have a mic there. Did you get that question?
One action.
No.
If there's one action that the panel could recommend for each person to take back as a priority when they get back to their desks, what would that be?
Oh, okay, thank you. Wow. One, that is pretty difficult, but I think I would say transformative agreements for better deals, especially for most of our researchers that in the LMIC. For me, I would give that as a priority.
Steve, shall I come to you next?
Yeah, I think it depends upon whether you have already defined sustainability for your organization, or have you already understood it? So if you haven't defined it, you have to define first. What does it mean for your organization? If you have already defined what sustainability means for your organization, then you have to convince your colleagues that we have to take action. And there are so many different ways you can do it. As I have mentioned, some tools are already available. But I think one way to convince it that we are all here, we work in the knowledge ecosystem. Sorry, I'm making it a bit longer. But we need to think that the SDG, climate action, everything is built on knowledge, peer-reviewed journal article. So if your output is being used by the world, shouldn't you look into yourself and do something and give back to the world as well, like contributing to sustainability, contributing to SDG, contributing to climate action, I think there's a moral obligation for we, the publisher. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jo?
Well, I think similar in the sense of understand where your organisation is on that journey, and then think about what needs to be done to, if you haven't started that journey, to start it, and if you are on that journey, is there a way to accelerate it or to bring more people on board? And I think the key to it is, I think it was mentioned earlier, in the sense of sustainability shouldn't be a separate strategy carried out by somebody separate in the organisation. It should be a part of the main strategic plan. It should be embedded in the plan and in the culture. And if it isn't, then think about how you can start to do that.
Fab, thanks, Jo. And Sydney?
Thank you. Yeah, to build on what Jo was saying, I think for me it's about if you're not someone who is creating a plan or someone who has an impact on culture, then what can you do as an individual, you know? And also about what Hasib was saying, you know, look at what your role is, what your day-to-day looks like, and think about how could that be made more sustainable, you know? Like, it's not just about the plan, you know, you can take the action yourself. So my suggestion would be to think about that in your own role. How could it be made more sustainable, not just in terms of more green, but, you know, the other aspects like DEI, this kind of thing. And take that to your line manager, you know, take it to the people who can influence. If you're not someone who has influence in an organisation, I think, yeah, we should take it all upon ourselves to make things more sustainable.
Thanks, Sydney. I think just my view as well, I think it's that whole piece about not letting perfect be the enemy of good. And a lot of the conversations that we've had here in the past about, you know, from the fellows angle, trying to encourage people to sign the compact. And I've heard people say, well, we can't because we'll have to fill in a report and we'll be held to account, and we just haven't got the bandwidth to do what Elsevier is doing or whoever, so we're just not gonna. And I think it's fine if your first step, if you're not in an organisation that's ready to do that, if your first step is to come to the SIG and lurk in some meetings and hear what people are talking about and take some ideas. And it doesn't, you know, we keep plugging the ALPSP, but there are lots of great groups that you could join as well. But I think just hear what your colleagues are doing in different places and take one thing away. But I think people sometimes get so overfaced by you've got to sign the compact and do the 10 whole things all at once and report on it, that they just become completely inert. And baby steps are fine, I think. So questions from the audience? We've got one. We've got a couple over there. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Bernie from ALPSP and also C4DISC, the Coalition for Inclusion and Diversity in Scholarly Communications. Thank you. So there's a lot of acronyms in our heads. So this is not a question. I'm meeting Amanda from ALPS after this because we want to figure out a way to make it easier for people to learn from each other. ALPS is a member of C4DISC. Lots of organisations and lots of member associations have fantastic stuff going on. We know that. So we want to signpost all of the things that are going on so people can find one place. Don't know if we're going to achieve it, but we're going to try. So people can find one place to go, oh, I'm interested in that topic or that subtopic of that bigger topic. So I'll join that community of practice or whatever it is. The other thing we want to do, and I'm saying, and the reason I'm mentioning this is because there'll be lots of members and partners of C4DISC in the room, is that we want to establish a series of webinars that are extremely practically focused, okay? Brilliant. So they're not going to be, we have a policy about this. It's going to be, we tried to do this recruitment thing, it didn't work, here's why it didn't work, so don't make the same mistake. Or we did this thing last month and it was a great success and we managed to get, I don't know, whatever the topic is. So I'm encouraging people to look out for us announcing that and get involved. And we're thinking 10-minute practical talks on real things that have happened and successes and failures, because we learn most when things don't work. So so people can dip in for 10 minutes or stay for a whole hour, whatever. So yeah, look out for that, and please get involved, because ALPSP is a tiny organisation, and so I know how hard it is to do things right when you have limited resources. But I loved the progress over perfection comment. That's really what it's about, I think. So thank you very much.
Brilliant, thank you. Did anybody want to? I think we have another question that, yeah.
Hello, I'm Dominique de Roo. I'm Vice President Corporate Strategy at the Goy de Bril. I have a question for Nasra. Something that came up yesterday at the keynote talk was that we as an industry are talking a lot about open access and research accessibility, and that's something that Research for Life is also doing, providing online access to our research to developing countries or middle income countries. And one of the points that was made is that sometimes there is no electricity or there is no internet, and that is also a key problem. It can be that one book that really makes a difference, and it might be a print book. And I'm wondering if that is a black spot within the industry that we're not focusing enough on. I'm wondering what your views are on that. Should we be doing more through donation programs or focusing on this more? Should we focus on making electricity more available? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I could respond to that, and it's very interesting that you bring that aspect. When we talk about LMIC, sometimes we make the mistake of think about the urban areas, which may be perhaps things like electricity and internet may perhaps not be a problem. Like perhaps where I'm working, I would say the two might not be a problem. But there are areas where you find like there's always power cuts and so on and so forth, like you have said. And that is something that needs to be addressed. As much as I didn't talk about it, is that how are we supporting the infrastructure to ensure that access is possible? And when I talked about even stakeholders coming together, as much as we talk about institutions and we talk about consortia and maybe libraries, I think even the government has a big role to play, because you know some of these things are from a national level. And that is one, in terms of maybe strengthening the internet, or maybe ensuring that everybody has access to electricity. But it's easier said than done. But how about providing access offline? I remember one time there was something, I can't remember, I think it was WHO that was providing something that, you know, like sort of like, I think they were calling it the Blue Trunk Library, for example, with a consideration that there are those rural areas that do not have electricity at any one time, do not have internet. So how do they still access this particular information without having to rely on these two issues of electricity and internet? So I think we need to be innovative and sort of repackage, if I could call it that way, in such a way where we are not dependent on these two, resources. In fact, sometimes I smile and I say, I wonder why we keep talking about electricity. How is electricity transmitted? I mean, we say like most of our countries are in the tropics. So why do we have a shortage? Because it did not rain. Why aren't we tapping on solar? But I think we could go on and on about this talk. So I think we just need to be more innovative, because access is a huge challenge. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nasra. That's great. We are out of time, unfortunately. I feel like we could have done this for hours. But if it's okay, if we could just bring up the last slide again, if that's okay, just so that I can put the resources slide on, if that works. I'd like to say a massive thank you to all 4 panellists for joining us today and taking the time to share their ideas. Please come and find any of us afterwards if you have more questions. I'm just going to jump onto this resources slide in case anybody would find that helpful. A couple of logistics things I just need to let people know before we move on. There is a thereabouts 5-minute break now to change rooms, and then the next session here will be what does AI mean for talent management, which sounds awesome. So thank you so much for joining us and for your participation, and we will speak to you soon. Thank you.